Tonight on Bridge City News, the City of Lethbridge responds to construction concerns of residents on the west side. The air quality in northern Alberta worsens as the out-of-control wildfire near High Level spreads. And British Prime Minister Theresa May is stepping down as leader of the UK Conservative Party. We will explain why.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. The blue cart pickups in Lethbridge have been a huge success. Now that's according to the Waste and Recycling General Manager, Joel Sanchez. To date, 196 tons of recyclables have been collected from the curbside program. Now there was some controversy involving the program. Lethbridge resident Colin Harms, who used to work at the city landfill, says he was surprised to see a city recycling truck there. Harms, who says he received images from people who still work at the landfill, posted this to his Facebook page yesterday. So this happened today. This makes me sick. We do our part to separate the recyclables, pay more monthly for bi-weekly service, and then this? Now, Sanchez addressed those concerns earlier today.
We know there have been recent concerns from residents about where the recyclables are going, and even in social media there was a recent event where there was a question asked. And again, I want to make an emphasis that so far, materials that are going or are being sent to the landfill are contaminated materials that are not inside the program. If I remind you what I mentioned earlier, out of 172, only 9.5 tons have been disposed of. So that material that goes to the landfill is either some of that material that got contaminated with the oil jug a few weeks ago when we have an incident at the facility. We have only disposed of one of the compactors. And that compactor had contaminated materials, and it also has materials that they probably are recyclables, like it could be a plastic jug or a plastic container that has margarine, it had food residues. So when that happened, we are not able to recycle those because they will contaminate the whole load.
The city says that about 96% of residents have been compliant with the ins and outs of the Blue Card program. The City of Lethbridge received a number of concerns about delays and safety this week regarding congestion on University Drive. Some people say the construction has added an extra hour of driving time to get home. Changes have been made to immediately stop two large construction projects on the south and west sides of Lethbridge.
Our staging plans, just like when we did Whoop Up and Matey Trail, we kind of coordinated. McMaster, we thought we could handle it, but I think that we were a little bit overwhelmed, and we had a lot of comments in, and right from people going to daycare and to schools and drop-offs, and we just felt it was necessary that we rethink this and actually open up McMaster.
Additional signage and the extension of green lights on the north and south side have been added to accommodate residents' concerns. It was a joyful day for the Matey community in the city. The Matey Nation of Alberta hosted its grand opening for the Matey Trail on the city's west side. Ainsley O'Reilly explains why the event was so impactful.
Lethbridge Mayor Chris Spearman has stressed multiple times the importance of reconciliation with the Blackfoot and Métis communities. Today's grand opening of Métis Trail was a step in the right direction.
We want to acknowledge not only the Blackfoot people, but the people of Métis heritage who contributed to our community. Those ancestors are really part of our history, and we shouldn't forget them. Métis Trail will always be a reminder of the contribution of the Métis people to this area.
Lethbridge MLAs Nathan Newdorf and Shannon Phillips were in attendance, while the local Métis community danced and spoke with joy.
We have been able to come out and share our history and our traditions with the Lethbridge community. We're very fortunate that we've been able to work with the First Nations people in southern Alberta, and we look forward to working with them and with the whole city.
We're making sure that we recognize our history in our present. And then it's also about working together collaboratively to resolve some long-standing issues that have been there for a long time and that really just take a good faith relationship on both sides to resolve.
To get to know the people of the First Nations and Métis and understand their traditions and build those relationships that I haven't had personally before, and to recognize them and make sure that the continuation of reconciliation moves forward, that we build those bridges and build that understanding and work together. That's how we really are successful in any endeavor that we do, is when we work together.
For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Lethbridge police have charged an Ottawa man in connection with an incident Wednesday evening where a 75-year-old woman was viciously assaulted in her home.
Investigation determined a male broke into the woman's home during the early morning hours of May 21st, 2019 and spent the night in the basement bedroom while she was asleep upstairs. Over the course of the 18 hours, the male remained in the woman's home while she slept and went about her business unaware of his presence. During the evening of May 22nd, while the woman was watching television, she heard a noise and she went to check on it, and she was confronted by a masked male.
Adam Hall Hobkirk Onate, 21 with no fixed address in Ottawa, is charged with assault causing bodily harm, housebreaking, and committing robbery with the disguise of intent. Hobkirk Onate has been remanded in custody and is scheduled to appear in court on May 27th. It was planting day at the Schulich Regional Hospital. The Beautification project encourages patients to get involved as part of therapy.
Today we are doing Schulich Regional Hospital Beautification project, and we've got around 70 volunteers involved from the community and from the Schulich Regional Hospital staff. The project started, I'm going to say, about 7 years ago, and it was actually started when our South Zone manager, Chris Fujita, was here. She kind of got it up and running, and it's been going since then. And the idea is that there's different areas around the hospital that have beautiful flowers and herbs and maybe some tomato plants and things like that. And it's a place where patients, staff, family can come, have their lunch, enjoy the beautiful grounds. It's great for patients recovering. They can go out into the gardens. It's very healing and soothing. And the idea is to have the hospital staff and the community come together and partner and just make the grounds beautiful.
Laporte Packer appreciated the efforts of the Schulich Regional Hospital Foundation for funding the project, and Reybold Coaldale Garden Centre, which provided the flowers. A home is the most important purchase of your life, but for many of us, the possibility is a far cry away. Video journalist Naveen Day visited a home built by the national nonprofit organization Habitat for Humanity. He says the organization is not only making housing affordable, but is changing lives right here in Lethbridge.
It may be a buyer's market down here in southern Alberta, but getting the financing in place to mortgage a home continues to get more difficult. Habitat for Humanity bridges the gap for low-income working families by providing them with the opportunity to purchase their own Habitat home and build a better life. Last year's recipients of a Habitat home, John and Catherine, say the home has played a pivotal role in their lives.
When we heard about the program, we applied, and our application was selected, and the committee came to our apartment. They interviewed us two times, and later on, a letter was sent to us that we are accepted. So we were excited to hear that we were accepted, and we were told anyway in 3 months, 4 months, we are going to start building the house. So be prepared. So it didn't really take long. Within 6 months, everything was done.
It has been exciting, or rather it's still exciting for us to have a bigger place. We were, contained in a very small apartment, which was just 2 rooms, and we have 3 kids. So it came in handy for us.
It's a popular myth that the homes are given away free of charge. Chairman for Habitat for Humanity Lethbridge, Dan Shapiro, says that in addition to volunteering 500 hours with Habitat, the families pay a mortgage.
We try to custom build a mortgage payment for each partner family, and as their income increases over the course of time, which we hope will be the case, so will their mortgage increase. But the mortgage is a 0% mortgage, so every payment made goes towards principal, unlike a chartered bank where you will pay interest.
Shapiro says he expects to break ground on another home similar to this one in the next 2 weeks. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
A prediction of heavy rain in parts of BC's southern interior has prompted a warning of possible flash flooding. Environment Canada says residents who live in the Fraser Canyon, Okanagan Valley, and South Thompson regions are the most at risk. It says many regions could receive up to 30 millimeters of rainfall tonight. The agency says if rain concentrates in one area, then residents can expect unstable slopes, localized flash flooding, or landslides. Air quality alerts have been issued in northern BC and parts of the Yukon because of smoke from the wildfires in northern Alberta. The advisory says smoke conditions can change quickly, and those most vulnerable include seniors, infants, and children should limit their exposure. Officials have been tracking a plume of smoke that extends 500 kilometers north from the Alberta wildfires and moved into Whitehorse. The out-of-control wildfire in High Level has now grown to over 97,000 hectares in size. More than 5,000 residents, including those on a nearby reserve, have been evacuated. J.W. Schnarr is the editor with the High Level Echo Pioneer, and he joins me now on the telephone. Now, J.W., I understand firefighters have now implemented controlled burns to help protect the town?
So there was a large gap between kind of the south and southwest end of town and the fire, which is a forested area. And over in that area are the two big sawmills up here, Norbord and Tolko. And so what they did was they basically just burned that forest area before the actual wildfire could get to it, and they did it in a controlled setting. And so the idea being that if the fire gets to that area, everything's already burned already. So firefighters that are operating in town, that's a lot of the municipal firefighters that have come up from around the province, and firefighters that are up here in High Level already, continued, or they finished their major work on protecting the town this week. So it was, all of their sprinkler defenses and that kind of stuff that they put in. They've been doing a lot of testing around the town, like the sprinklers and stuff are running all the time just to make sure that if they are needed, they will work as planned.
Has High Level Mayor Crystal McAteer said when people can return to their homes?
No, that's still, the danger level's still very high. It's still a situation where, we've been very lucky up here with the direction that the wind's blowing. But, the situation could change very quickly. And the province, like the Alberta wildfire, has kind of a criteria that they have before they can deem it safe for people to come back. Those conditions haven't been met yet.
Thanks so much, JW. Stay safe. Mayor McAteer has asked the province to help provide financial compensation for fire evacuees in the form of preloaded debit cards for the 5,000 people who fled the town on Monday. The Supreme Court of Canada says Ontario trucker Bradley Barton should be retried for manslaughter in the death of Albertan Cindy Gladue. In a 4-3 decision today, the High Court says evidence about sexual history was mishandled at the original trial that led to Barton's acquittal on a charge of first-degree murder. Barton acknowledged hiring Gladue for sex in 2011 and claimed the severe injury which led to her death was an accident. The Crown argued that Barton intentionally wounded Gladue and was guilty of first-degree murder. The Supreme Court says Barton's new trial should be restricted to the offense of manslaughter. The federal election is scheduled for October 21st. Now, according to our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion, something which will play a major role is the Ethics Commissioner's report on the SNCLavalin affair, which may be released during the election campaign.
So far, his investigation into the SNCLavalin affair is going quite well. He's interviewed many witnesses, including people in the Prime Minister's office. He says that his report won't be published before Parliament adjourns for the summer on June 21st at the latest. He's got a few more months of investigating to go. But yeah, it's a possibility that his report might be published during the election campaign. That would make the campaign even more interesting.
Ray will also have the latest involving the 2 Canadians who were arrested in China for spying. That interview is coming up after business news. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says lifting the tariffs on steel and aluminum was good for Canada, but much more needs to be done. He made the comments at a factory in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario.
Lifting those tariffs takes off a big challenge, particularly because here in the Soo, there's a tremendous amount of exposure to the American market. Those tariffs really were a challenge for Algoma and others. We know that lifting those was an important step, but there's more to do. We continue to have the safeguards on plate steel. We continue to look forward on ways of ensuring that we are protecting our steel workers and the Canadian steel industry from the impact of a global market that is very challenging at times. We're going to continue to stand strong against transshipments. This is something that was actually integral to the approach we've taken with the United States and Mexico as they lifted those tariffs. As we lifted our counter tariffs, we committed to continue to watch very, very closely to make sure that our North American steelworkers are still secure and able to contribute the way they always have.
After failing to deliver on Brexit, British Prime Minister Theresa May announced today that she will be stepping down as the UK Conservative Party leader on June the 7th.
I feel as certain today as I did 3 years ago that in a democracy, if you give people a choice, you have a duty to implement what they decide. I have done my best to do that. I negotiated the terms of our exit and a new relationship with our closest neighbours that protects jobs, our security and our union. I have done everything I can to convince MPs to back that deal. Sadly, I have not been able to do so. I tried 3 times. I believe it was right to persevere, even when the odds against success seemed high. But it is now clear to me that it is in the best interests of the country for a new Prime Minister to lead that effort.
The party will hold a leadership contest on June 10th, with a successor to be named later this summer. Charismatic but polarizing Prime Minister Narendra Modi has surged to a landslide victory in the Indian elections. He won with 63.6% of the vote. During his victory speech, Modi said his win was a guarantee of a bright future for the common people of his country. His BJP party is firmly rooted in the Hindu right-wing movement. Close to 80% of Indians call themselves Hindu. Some rain is in the forecast this weekend, which may be a perfect time to take your family to the movies. For a look at what's playing at the Mill, here's Mr. Len Binning with another Movie Mill Minute.
Well, Disney's back at it. Dumbo, the live-action adaptation, stars Danny DeVito as the head of a struggling circus. Colin Farrell is tasked with taking care of a new elephant with extraordinary large ears. When they find out he can fly, it changes things for the circus.
You have something very rare. You have wonder. You have mystique. You have magic.
They say we all have a little superhero in us. It just takes a little magic to bring it out. 14-year-old Billy Batson stars in Shazam, and the utterance of that word turns him into a modern-day superhero. Let's take a look.
Say my name so my powers may flow through you.
But I don't know your name, sir.
Shazam.
Are you for real? Say, okay! Shazam?
Next up is a faith-based film named Breakthrough, the inspirational true story of a mother whose adopted son falls through the ice and is pronounced dead, but she does not give up hope, and her prayers are answered.
No. Please, God, send your Holy Spirit to save my son.
Looks like great movies once again. It may be good to spend some time indoors this weekend. Showers are in the forecast. I'll have a look at the weather details coming up in just a moment. We had kind of a mixed bag today. Sunshine, but also some clouds and showers in some areas. Tonight, a good chance of rain again with a low near 7 degrees. Tomorrow, a chance of thunder showers developing with a high near 17. Sunday, the rain should clear out and we should see a high near 16. Monday, a high-pressure system returns, bringing lots of sun and a high of 19 degrees. Even warmer on Tuesday with a daytime high near 24 expected. Wednesday, the mercury will climb even further to 26. Thursday, just a few clouds and a high near 22 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 19 and an average low of 6. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 2001 at 33 degrees, and the record low was -5 in 2000. Sunrise was at 5:36, sunset at 9:20. Let's see how tomorrow's shaping up across the country. Rain and 17 is on tap for Victoria, Vancouver will also receive showers and 18. Rain and 13 is expected in Calgary tomorrow. Edmonton will also receive rain and a high of 18. Showers and 20 for Regina. 16 is on tap for Saskatoon on Saturday. A mixture of sun and cloud and a high of 18 for Winnipeg. A good chance of thunder showers and a high of 21 for Toronto. Pretty much the same picture for Ottawa. Montreal will be rainy and 20. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will have lots of sunshine and 22. Halifax, Nova Scotia will also be sunny and 20. Sunshine and 16 is expected in Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect sun mixed with cloud and a high near 9 degrees tomorrow. The BC Court of Appeal says the province cannot restrict oil shipments through its borders. It is a win for the future of the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion. The province filed a question to the court asking whether it had the authority to create a permitting regime for companies that wish to increase their flow of diluted bitumen. BC argued its proposed legislation was meant to protect the environment. Ottawa and Alberta argued the goal was to block the Trans Mountain project. The 5-judge panel agreed unanimously that the proposed BC legislation was not constitutional because it interferes with the federal government's jurisdiction over interprovincial pipelines. China is wrapping up the war of words in its trade war with the United States. A foreign ministry spokesperson today accused the U.S. of seeking to colonize global business with moves against Huawei and other Chinese technology companies. Washington considers Huawei a security threat. A Chinese government spokesperson says the U.S. is fabricating lies to mislead the American public. The rhetoric is being ramped up as negotiations to resolve the trade dispute broke off earlier this month. Since that time, the Trump administration has raised tariffs on billions of dollars of imports from China.
3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition. Liftoff.
SpaceX has launched 60 little satellites. They're the first of thousands that founder Elon Musk plans to put in orbit for global internet coverage. The recycled Falcon rocket blasted off from Cape Canaveral, Florida late yesterday. Musk says all 60 flat panel satellites were deployed several hundred kilometers above the Earth. He says 12 launches of 60 satellites each will provide high-speed internet coverage throughout the United States. Worldwide attendance at the 10 biggest operators of amusement parks increased 4% last year and crossed the 500 million visitors mark for the first time. That's according to an industry report released this week. The report said the growth was driven by new attractions based on the Toy Story franchise. Magic Kingdom in Florida was the best attended park in the world with 20.8 million visitors in 2018, followed by Disneyland in California with 18.6 million visitors. Now, here's a look at today's markets. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, a prediction of heavy rain in parts of BC's southern interior has prompted a warning of possible flash flooding. Environment Canada says residents who live in the Fraser Canyon, Okanagan Valley, and South Thompson regions are the most at risk. It says many regions could receive up to 30 millimeters of rainfall tonight. Canada is facing U.S. pressure to ban Huawei from its upcoming 5G network. Our parliamentary reporter Ray Fillion has details next. But first, here's a look what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. Come out and support a worthy cause. The Walk to Make Cystic Fibrosis History is taking place Sunday, May 26th at Henderson Lake Park. Registration is at 9:30 a.m. at the Horseshoe Pits, and the walk begins at 10:30. The walk is 5 kilometers, and leashed pets are welcome to join. For details, visit cysticfibrosis.ca. Kick off your summer with Alberta Blue Cross and Silverberg Group's Street Eats Festival on Saturday, June 15th, beginning at 11 a.m. at the NMAX Centre parking lot. Enjoy delicious and unique food truck cuisines, a kids zone, entertainment, and an eating contest. This event is in support of Lethbridge Family Services. For more information, visit lfsfamily.ca. Devil's Coulee Dinosaur and Heritage Museum, located in Warner, Alberta, is now open until September 2nd. Take a tour of the dinosaur gallery, heritage exhibits, and military displays. Visit Charlie the Baby Dinosaur, dig in a simulated bone bed, and see an actual nesting site. For more information, visit devilcoulee.com. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Ottawa's now sent a delegation to China to try and free both Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig. To tell us more about it is our parliamentary reporter, Ray Filion. Ray, the two Canadians have been arrested and charged with spying. Any chance they may actually be coming home?
Well, that's a big question. As you said, Canada has decided to send a delegation to China. Ms. Freeland's parliamentary secretary, Rob Oliphant, is there with some other people trying to meet with individuals in China to try and get ahead in that file. The problem is one of Canada's former ambassadors to China was speaking this week, and he said that even if Justin Trudeau were to pick up the phone and call Xi Jinping, the Chinese president, there's a good chance he wouldn't even take the call. This is how angry the Chinese are right now at Canada over the arrest of Meng Wanzhou, the senior Huawei executive who was arrested here in Canada, in Vancouver, in early December. And just days after that, China arrested those two Canadians, Michael Spavor and Michael Kovrig, on suspicion that they tried to steal some Chinese government secrets. It was only last week that they were formally arrested. So who knows if we're going to be able to make any headways. It looks like a very tough nut to crack right now for the Canadian government. No end in sight, if you ask experts for this feud, this tension that's still ongoing between Ottawa and Beijing. It looks like the Chinese absolutely want Meng Wanzhou to be freed by Canadian officials. Obviously, that it doesn't look like that's going to be possible because she was arrested by Canadian authorities at the request of Washington. And, you know, there's this whole process to deport her to the United States. So no end in sight for this feud, unfortunately.
And Ray, Canada is facing U.S. pressure to ban Huawei from its upcoming 5G network. Tell me more about that.
Well, that's right. As you know, the United States, other allies, in terms of in the intelligence community like New Zealand and Australia have already banned Huawei from their upcoming 5G network. Canada says they're still debating it. The Prime Minister was asked a couple of times this week at media events, and he said that he still awaits advice from Canada's intelligence community on what to do. But the Americans are really turning up the pressure. A senior Democrat this week gave an interview to the Globe and Mail. He's the Democratic vice chair of the U.S. Senate Intelligence Committee, and he's urging Canada to follow suit, to ban Huawei, to not let the Chinese company play any role in Canada's upcoming 5G network. His name is Mark Warner, and he actually, in the interview with the Globe and Mail, he asked Canadian officials to set aside any ill feelings they might have toward Donald Trump and his administration and really ban Huawei. He says it's absolutely impossible to imagine that you can put safeguards in place to keep Huawei from spying on Canada and its allies. Ban Huawei, that was the message in the interview. And as I said, the Prime Minister here in Canada says discussions are ongoing still. His public safety minister did say a few weeks ago that a decision would be coming before the October 21st election, though.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau wants the new USMCA deal ratified. He'll get the chance to chat a little bit more about it with U.S. Vice President Mike Pence about the new trade deal next week in Ottawa.
That's right. Mike Pence is coming to the nation's capital on Thursday of next week. He announced it a few days ago on Twitter. The Prime Minister actually went on a bit of a celebratory tour in the past week. He was in Hamilton meeting with steel workers following the deal that was reached to lift those much despised U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel and aluminum. So he went to Hamilton to meet with steel workers. He went to Sept-Îles, Quebec, in eastern Quebec, to meet with aluminum workers. And on Friday, he's meeting with steel workers in Sault Ste. Marie in Ontario. The Prime Minister said that now that this big obstacle has been lifted, finally, he wants to ratify the new NAFTA 2.0. That was the deal that was reached with the Americans and the Mexicans last fall. He says it's a good deal for Canadians. The question is, when? Is this something that's going to happen before Parliament rises for the summer on June 21st? We don't know yet. He says he's going to talk to Mike Pence about it next week when they meet here in Ottawa.
Federal Conservative leader Andrew Scheer has unveiled more election promises this week. How did they look?
Well, he was talking tough on crime. The Conservative leader promising that a Conservative government will impose mandatory minimum sentences of 5 years, at least, for anyone convicted of abusing children. He says that a strong message needs to be sent to victims that those are serious crimes and that people are going to be sent away for a very long time when caught. On Wednesday, he also promised funding to help law enforcement better fight human trafficking. He's also promising to introduce some changes to Canada's criminal code to make it easier to convict people accused of human trafficking. So we're seeing more and more of Andrew Scheer's upcoming platform taking shape. He's doing this now. Senior Conservatives are telling us that they want to put some meat out there before Canadians go to the cottage. Some stuff to think about ahead of the election campaign. So, and you'll recall that Justin Trudeau kind of did the same thing in 2015. He unveiled some elements of his platform before Canadians went on vacation, and it worked for him. So Mr. Scheer is trying to use the same recipe, and he's going to give more speeches in the coming weeks to unveil other parts of his platform.
Let's talk about another federal party leader. PPC leader Maxime Bernier has been stirring the pro-life versus pro-choice pot by saying he's not against a debate on abortion.
That's right. He held a news conference earlier this week to unveil some new candidates in the Quebec City area. And with abortion being a hot topic in the United States, as you know, he was asked about it by a reporter during the press conference. And Mr. Bernier said he wouldn't keep any of his MPs from introducing legislation to reopen the debate on abortion. He simply said that if someone wants to table a bill that has to do with abortion, he'll look at it and he'll let the debate take place. Mr. Bernier was also called out this week by many in the media for not having enough women run for his party. Out of the 10 candidates he introduced in the Quebec City area this week, there was only one woman, and he answered women have other priorities without saying exactly what those priorities might be. He says that unlike Justin Trudeau, he's not aiming for parity.
Former Justice Minister Jody Wilson-Raybould says she'll be making a decision very soon regarding her political future. Tell me more about that.
Everyone's interested, I can tell you. I've seen reporters bumping into Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott, the other former Liberal cabinet minister. And every time that happens, someone pops the question, have you made up your mind? What are you going to do? Are you going to run in the next election? Will you be joining another political party? And the answer is the same from both of these women. They say, stay tuned. They say that they're going to be making a decision pretty soon. As you know, the NDP is very interested in recruiting them. Ditto for the Green Party of Canada. And they've both said that their time in politics is not over. So if I were a betting man, I would say that they're about to join another political party or run as independent candidate. But I would go with the first option. Something tells me they're going to be making an announcement with Elizabeth May or Jagmeet Singh in the weeks to come. Probably more with Elizabeth May. Because that's the party that has more momentum right now.
And would you have a little more clout, a little more credit if you're actually running with a party instead of trying to run as an independent?
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. I mean, when people run as independent candidates, very few get elected. We haven't seen many of those in the past few decades in Canada, for sure.
Ray, a survey on sexual misconduct in the Canadian Forces is really casting doubt on the strategy to eliminate sexual assault in our military.
Yeah, that strategy was launched 4 years ago. It's called Operation Honor. The goal of that strategy, launched 4 years ago in 2015, was to eradicate sexual harassment sexual misconduct and sexual harassment, obviously. Now, in 2016, the Canadian military asked Statistics Canada to conduct a wide survey among members of the Canadian Armed Forces. They repeated that exercise last fall between September and November, and the results have barely changed. 1.6% of regular force members say they were sexually assaulted at work in the previous 12 months. In the primary reserve, it was 2.2%, barely lower than in 2016. StatsCan also said this week that women in the regular force were 4 times more likely than men to be sexually assaulted at work. In the primary reserve, they were 6 times more likely to be assaulted at work. The Canadian forces say those results are obviously very, very disappointing, but they wouldn't call Operation Honor a failure. They know that most CF members are aware of the program, which is another finding of Statistics Canada. And the military says it takes time to change mentalities, but obviously a change couldn't come soon enough. And the fact is, many victims in the Canadian Armed Forces are afraid to come forward and file complaints against their assailants. They're afraid of what that might do to their career, which is pretty sad.
More news out of our nation's capital, and that Chief of Defence staff are getting a pay raise. I mean, we heard recently about MPs getting a pay raise, around $3,300 or so, just on $180K a year. How much are we talking about for the Chief of Defence staff?
We're talking about a 5% increase for General Jonathan Vance to $306,500, and the Prime Minister signed off on it. The government says there's absolutely nothing nefarious here. It's a regular thing for senior officials to have their pay reassessed. But the timing was kind of lousy because news of that was posted on the government website the day after charges against Mark Norman, the Vice Admiral, were dropped. And obviously, we know that a lot of questions are being asked about the military leadership in this file. So yeah, lousy timing for such an announcement.
The Trudeau government recently announced that it's investing some big bucks into the Canadian Coast Guard. Ray, is this going to help maybe secure more votes in British Columbia?
Well, maybe, because the bulk of the contracts are set to go to the big shipyard near Vancouver. We're talking big money here, $15.7 billion over the coming weeks. The Prime Minister actually traveled to Vancouver this week to make this announcement. The Feds say they're planning to build up to 18 new Coast Guard ships. Most of them, as I said, would be built at the Seaspan yard in the Vancouver area. Others would be built at the Irving shipyard in Halifax. But because those 2 shipyards I just mentioned are so busy, their books are full for the coming years, they're thinking about adding a 3rd shipyard, and that would probably be the Davie shipyard near Quebec City, which wasn't part of the previous naval strategy. And the government has also warned that $15.7 billion is just a start. It could go higher. And as you know, Hal, having covered federal politics, you know how those big procurement projects go. You start with a price tag, and it tends to balloon quite fast. But a lot of money, obviously.
Yeah, a lot of times over budget, you bet. Ray, the Ethics Commissioner could unveil his report on the SNC-Lavalin controversy during the election campaign. Talk about timing.
Yeah, that's what he told us this week. He's not excluding the fact that his report into the SNC-Lavalin scandal might land smack dab in the middle of the election campaign. Mario Dion met us for an interview this week. He's back on the job after a pretty severe illness. He was off the job for several weeks. He came back a couple of weeks ago. He says he's fully recovered, but he told us that at some point he was scared he may not be back on the job at all. That's how bad his disease was. The commissioner told me that so far his investigation into the SNC-Lavalin affair is going quite well. He's interviewed many witnesses, including people in the Prime Minister's office. He says that his report won't be published before Parliament adjourns for the summer on June 21st at the latest. He's got a few more months of investigating to go. But yeah, it's a possibility that his report might be published during the election campaign. That would make the campaign even more interesting.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is promising a solution soon for the Canadian garbage in the Philippines. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, the garbage is coming home, Hal. 69 containers that have been in and around Manila for over 5 years. And as you know, this has been an ongoing thing between Canada and the Philippines. As a matter of fact, I was on the Prime Minister's first trip there in 2015 as Prime Minister, and he was asked about it a couple of times by Filipino reporters. He said that Canada was working on a plan. In the past couple of weeks, the Filipino president, Mr. Duterte, threatened to declare war on Canada if Canada wasn't going to do anything soon. Now, it was announced this week that Ottawa has hired a private company to bring this stuff here by late June at the latest. But that timeline apparently is not good enough for the Filipino government. Manila is giving Ottawa until the end of next week to take the garbage away from their country and bring it back to Canada. Otherwise, they say they're going to ship it themselves. But yeah, it looks like we're nearing the end of that saga. 69 containers containing all kinds of stuff, filthy stuff, adult diapers, household waste. It's a shame it's taken this long to find a solution to this.
And do we have the room for it, when it comes back here? I don't know what we're going to do with all of that garbage.
Yeah, well, apparently Canada's going to find a way to dispose of all that stuff. They haven't said exactly where it's going to go, though.
Wow. Our parliamentary reporter, Ray Fillion, joining me once again from Ottawa. Thanks so much, Ray.
You're welcome, Hal.
Abortion has been in the news quite a bit lately, with numerous U.S. states enacting fetal heartbeat laws and with our Canadian Prime Minister voicing his strong support for abortion in this country. Joining me now at the desk is Kimberly Vroom with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life to discuss a lot of pro-life issues. Welcome to Bridge City News, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Now, before we get into it, let's talk about your big fundraiser coming up on Saturday, Henderson Lake. Tell me more about it.
Oh yeah, so we're having a big fundraiser on June 1st. Our theme this year is unique from day one, celebrating, life from conception all the way till natural death. All of our supporters come out, they fundraise from their friends and their family. They come out, we give them t-shirt, hot dogs, chips, the whole 9 yards. The kids have fun with games. We ask that they walk around the Henderson Lake 1 or 2 times, It's a real fun event.
It's a great park too.
It is a wonderful park. Usually the weather's beautiful, we have a pretty good turnout, and we'd love to have a lot of people there just to celebrate life and, coming together as a pro-life community in Lethbridge.
Why do you think it is that the pro-life message has always been met with so much controversy?
Abortion is so polarizing because when people love abortion, they don't realize what it actually is. And so when you show them the truth of it, they don't want to see it. They try to hide from it. But when you understand what abortion is and how it actually hurts women and, it kills children every day, then you can't just stand by and do nothing. So that's why I think we have such very active participants on both sides of the debate, because some people are so strongly for it because they don't realize what they're defending, and the people that are against it realize what they're doing, and they realize that they can't sit around and not have a voice for the unborn.
People who are pro-choice, Kimberly, they often say, this is my life, my body, my choice, right? But then pro-lifers say, no, there's more than just your body involved. There's another person's body growing inside of you. That's the problem. That's the issue.
Yep.
So what kind of a conversation? Tell me about some of those conversations you have with pro-choice people. Alrighty,
so when you're talking to someone who's pro-choice, the first thing you need to do is establish common ground. So basically you say, you know what, yeah, I agree with you. Women should have a choice over what they can do with their bodies. However, I don't believe that we can justify the killing of another human being so that they can have control over their bodies. Then they'll usually respond with something like, well, they can't survive outside of the womb on their own. Well, that doesn't mean that they're any less human or should be granted any less rights than anybody else. Pro-lifers, we're seen as anti-choice and anti-women, but what we're really against is the one choice, is just abortion. We're against that choice because it actively kills another human being. There's so many choices for women to do if they want to go to school, if they want to parent, they can give their child up for adoption. There's so many ways that we can help them and encourage them to be healthy. We just don't think abortion is a morally justifiable option.
Some pro-choice people I've spoken with in the past, Kimberly, they say, we're very much pro-life except when somebody's raped, attacked, raped, brutalized, and then they don't want that seed growing in another individual from a rapist. They can't justify that. They're like, there's no way I want that seed growing in my wife, my daughter, whatever. So sometimes people say, I can understand where you're coming from, but at the same time, it's not that baby's fault.
No, it's
right?
not. And we firmly believe that rape is an awful, awful thing, and rapists should be punished to the full extent of the law. And I personally don't believe that they're punished enough in the current climate of our modern society. Unfortunately, that's the society we live in. But with unborn children, they're a victim of the rape as well, because they didn't ask to be created. Mom is just as much a victim, but when she turns her desperation onto her child and goes in through with an abortion, that just creates two victims, a dead child and a mother who's hurting from both the rape and the abortion. And we'd love to give support and give resources to women who have gone through rape. And there's actually there's a big contingency of people who have gotten pregnant from rape or conceived out of rape. And they're fighting for their lives as well, and for their voice, because having an abortion doesn't take away that guilt, the feeling of worthlessness that someone that violates you does, right? It often makes it bigger and makes you feel worse. And so abortion doesn't cure those feelings, and neither does it. It doesn't help women in those situations either.
There was some controversy surrounding some of the bus bench ads involving some of the pro-life ads that we've seen with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life. Some people said they were too graphic, and I think City Hall received something like 200 or 300 calls, so they were yanked, they were pulled off. And now it's in front of the courts.
Yeah, so we have a hearing in October. As far as what the ads were exactly, it was a picture of an unborn child in the womb. Nothing graphic about it, something you see on a 3D ultrasound or, a very high-tech camera. But in City Hall, they received a few hundred supporters from people who said those were too graphic, but they also received over several thousands of pro-life signatures the other way, saying that this is a breach of our freedom of expression and that this is unacceptable. And so, yeah, we have a hearing in October with the courts, and our lawyer's been great. She's been wonderful helping us with this case.
We'll have to keep an eye on that, definitely. What are your thoughts on what's happening in the United States right now? Alabama's saying, they're basically saying legislation is coming out, no abortions are allowed. Doctors can be criminally charged for performing abortions. But then in a state like New York, you can basically bring a baby to term and then kill it. I mean, in the same country, such diametrically opposed positions. Pro-life and pro-choice, what are your thoughts?
I mean, I think that's incredible. That's crazy. But in any country, you're going to find people who are diametrically opposed to abortion, because here in Canada, we have people who would love to see rid abortion of Canada, like get it out of here, fully. But we also have people who like the fact that it's legal through all 9 months. And, in Alabama, it's really great to see that they're willing to stand for life and have those values in place. Banning abortion past 6 weeks when the heartbeat can be detected. And it's important to note that in Alabama that the women who are getting illegal abortions aren't the ones that are being charged for this. It's the abortionist. It's the person committing the crime. It is considered a felony. It'll be considered a felony in Alabama if an abortionist does an abortion after 6 weeks.
So pro-choice people are saying, Kimberly, well, people are still going to want to have abortions regardless of what the law dictates. So where are these people going to go?
I mean, they'll have to travel out of state, or they will go through with their pregnancy and give the baby up for adoption, which is, the more desirable choice. It's the choice where two people, we save the life of one, and we empower the life of the other.
Our Prime Minister Justin Trudeau has gone on record saying he's very much pro-choice, right? Abortion, it's not going to be an issue that's going to be brought up again. The laws in our country. The same thing with Andrew Scheer, the Tory leader, federal Tory leader. He said the same thing. I'm not going to reopen that debate. What are your thoughts on that? How do you feel about that?
I think it's crazy. Abortion was decriminalized 50 years ago, and the law was struck down almost 30 years ago. And I'm sitting here as a 20-year-old, and you're going to tell me that the abortion debate shouldn't be reopened? It's been 50 years. I think it's time we have a talk about it. It's been 50 years of decriminalized and 30 years of just free-for-all, like legal through all 9 months of pregnancy. We're the only developed country in the world that has laws that lacks, actually no laws, in fact, on abortion.
Some argue that abortion is justified because of so little support being available for young, expectant mothers. How do you respond to that?
I would say that, well, as far as what pro-lifers are doing, we're doing as much as we can. We just started a new house called Elsie's House for young and expectant mothers who are in desperate situations, where they can come while they're expecting, be supported through discounted housing, parenting classes, resources, and counseling. They can come live for discounted prices, and they can stay there all the way until their child is 2. We're doing the work. We're willing to help these women who are in desperate situations, who don't think they have it any way out. We're often asked, well, why don't you support these things? Why don't you support people who foster? Why don't you adopt children? Well, the truth of it is, we are doing that. That's what pro-lifers are doing. I can, if you come to the Hike for Life on Saturday, you probably see multiple foster children there, because they're the people that are willing to sacrifice for them.
What message do you have for the potential fathers? We always hear about the mom and the baby, but there are 2 parties involved, well, 3 parties if you involve the baby. What do you say to the males, the potential fathers?
I would say it's also your responsibility. Abortion makes it so easy for men to, the woman is pregnant, they can just leave, and the woman has to have to bear the burden of
big responsibility, financial responsibility too.
That too, and child support is a very flawed system. A lot of men don't end up paying for it, and if you can't prove the paternity of the father, then they get off scot-free. And I would also encourage men, if your partner is considering abortion, say something. It's really sad that in Canada you can't say you don't have rights over the child, only the woman does. But it is important that you use your voice and you speak to her and you encourage her to put that child up for adoption or to keep the child. You have a say too. Abortion isn't just a women's issue.
Let's talk about Unplanned now, the story about Abby Johnson, the former director of Planned Parenthood, who actually apparently went into her abortion clinic, saw an abortion being performed, the baby being ripped out of the mother's womb, and then instantly changed her mind, became pro-life. She left as the director, and now this movie Unplanned is not being seen, or it's not being picked up by Landmark, Cineplex, the major theater distributors here in Canada. So, I guess some churches can actually ask to be brought in?
Well, we're hoping to purchase the DVD once it comes to DVD, and then we will probably get in touch with Movie Mill to see if we can show some showings there. Otherwise, we'll show it at churches and any other place that would be willing to show it. We've had so much support for it on these petitions online that I don't think we could, even if it was banned by distributors, we'd have to show it at some point in Canada.
Do you think it's Hollywood leans more to the left? That's why they're very much pro-choice?
I'm not really sure why in
Canada. A form
Canada.
of censorship, perhaps?
Possibly. I know that in the States it's very much considered a Christian film or one that's not valid. But from all the reviews that I've seen, I personally haven't seen it. It's still a good movie, despite the message it sends. But the message that it sends is a very heartbreaking but very positive one, showing how abortion really changes people.
The movie received an R rating, not because of foul language, not because of anything else, but the violence of actually ripping the baby out of the mother's womb, how graphic that was. That's why it received an R rating.
Well, I totally agree with that. I believe that, abortion is rated R. It shouldn't be allowed. It's terrible, it's egregious, it's violent.
Do you think more expectant mothers should maybe go actually see an abortion being performed if they're considering an abortion that would maybe scare them straight or have them change their minds?
I am more for showing them, before they have the abortion, have to take a look at the ultrasound before they're given the choice to abort. Because often when they go to abortion clinics, they do an ultrasound to see how big the baby is, and the screen is turned away from the mom, and they just, that's all they see. They see the back of a screen and a technician holding the ultrasound over their belly. They might not even hear the heartbeat.
At what point do we hear the heartbeat? 6 weeks?
Well, the heart starts beating at 3 weeks.
3 weeks. Okay.
It can probably be detected around 6 weeks, which is why the abortion ban in Alabama is around 6 weeks. But, that doesn't, just because the heart starts beating around 3 weeks, at conception, when the egg and the sperm come together and there's a brand new set of DNA, 46 chromosomes, we know that's when life begins. Biologically speaking, that's when life begins, and that's when life should be protected.
Do you ever make your way to schools or other community groups and talk to young people about why you're so passionate about being pro-life?
Well, considering I am still a youth,
yeah.
I consider myself
20 years young, right?
Yeah, that's pretty.
So you're not too far removed from being in high school yourself, right?
I was a I was on my Lethbridge, my Students for Life club in high school. You know, we tried to support single mothers with donations from our club. You know, we held a life day. We had shirts and t-shirts, and we encouraged all of the students to raise money, and we had a wonderful day. As far as talking to youths, you know, I've done activism on the streets of Lethbridge. I went to Florida for a week, and we did activism on the campuses there, just because there's less regulation and we have an opportunity to show.
What was that like? Tell me about that experience.
With CCBR, we go down to Florida, Canadian Center for Bioethical Reform. We go down to Florida for a week. It's for college students and high school students. It's, you know, in February, so you get a nice warm break. We're going to Florida. You go down to campuses, and we have the signs up around the campuses, and we learned apologetics. And we talk to students there about abortion, and you know, that's really important down there, because we see the people that, you know, they're not thinking about it, but once they do have an unplanned pregnancy, you know, we've already caught them before that. We've already given them the information. We've already shown them what abortion really is, and so they can't say they didn't know. You know, it's so important to get people young, especially high school students and college students, to let them know what abortion really is.
Do you think a lot of people are maybe coming at it from the wrong mindset? I know with the recent March for Life that took place in Ottawa, over 100,000 people, the anti-pro-lifers called it a pro-choice protest. It wasn't really a protest, it was a rally for pro-life, right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's just the whole mindset is wrong. What are your thoughts?
Well, I mean, as much as it's a rally, it's still a protest. We go to Ottawa, we're on Parliament Hill. You know, there's no way they can ignore us. And yet somehow the media still find a way to show that the pro-choice and the pro-life groups are the same size, when clearly there's 100,000 pro-lifers and, you know, a few thousand pro-choicers, if even that. But it's a rally. It's also a celebration of life, you know. I've been to the March for Life in Ottawa. It's one of the most uplifting times, the most encouraging to go to. But it's also important that if you go to a March for Life, to say in Edmonton or Ottawa or Toronto, that you go there for your encouragement, and then you go home and do work. And you work in your community to end abortion there. And you put the time and effort into helping the unborn.
Kimberly, one last thought. We've got a viewer right now who may be pregnant, is watching our program, and is considering getting abortion. What message do you have for that person?
I would say you're not alone. You know, there's so many resources we have here in Lethbridge. We have the Crisis Pregnancy Care Center. We have Elsie's House. Abortion is a decision that you'll live with forever, and it's not one you can reverse. Whereas, you know, if you have your child, you have so much time. You can decide if you want to put them up for adoption. You know, you have the whole pregnancy to think about that. And then you can decide if you want to parent or you want to adopt. You know, it's a life-giving option and not a death-giving one. And I would encourage them to, you know, look at their options and also consider what abortion really is.
Kimberly Vroom with Lethbridge and District Pro-Life, thanks so much for joining me in studio today.
Thank you so much.
On behalf of all of us here at BCN, I'm Hal Roberts. God bless and have a great night.